Hey guys, I'm learning TFT. In this video, I'm going to share with you a video where Marcel P goes through a detailed 13.6 meta and patch analysis. Marcel has been running it up really well in ladder lately as he is preparing for regionals. He's averaging a ridiculous 2.75 with a 68% top four and 20% win rate. And in the video, he's going to break down his complete meta strategy. In addition, I've been coached by Marcel for this whole set, and I played in two tournaments this last weekend, basically using Marcel's game plan. And I got first place in Kai Project Mentor tournament. So I got three first places using this approach. And this was my second win of the set. So I won both of the two Project Mentor tournaments, which felt great. And then ASA's TFT Coaching Plus tournament also occurred, and I got second place in that tournament. So overall, I feel like Marcel's meta read is really good, has been working out really effectively for me. And I'll just give you kind of a teaser here, and I'll go into the meta mindset. After that, I'll jump straight into Marcel's video. So these are kind of the big improved lines compared to 13.5. So Twitch, which more so represents 4 Sniper Flex, which can even be played around Fast 8 Zeri 2. And he talks about various front lines that you can play with that, 4 Watcher being the best, but you can also flex between Experiment frontline, Sentinel frontline as well. Akali-centric Quick Striker reroll. So with the mana buff to Akali, she has gotten very strong, and so you can actually be quite stable in stage 3 if you roll a bit for a Akali 2 on 3-2. And then decide whether you want to reroll on 6 or 7, depending on how many Akalis you've hit. Family reroll is back, and I've used Draven as a representation here, since Marcel's basically saying Draven is a lot more consistent than Violet. If you think about melee units can just randomly die if you have poor positioning, but Draven's just a lot more consistent, can get you conquer stacks. So yeah, playing around Draven can be really good. Zeri reroll, I'm sure you've seen by now, so I won't talk about that here. Morgana reroll actually is quite good, and I got first place in the Project Mentor tournament using that approach, which you really want blue buff Gunblade +1. So this, Marcel says, is one of the few ways if you don't have a good opener, you can lean towards Morgana if you have a tier. And then lastly, Silco for vertical dominator, so Black Rose Silco or vertical Chimera. And Marcel will dive into the nuances of all of those, as well as what's worse compared to 13.5, about the same, and kind of the overall strategy for the 13.6 meta. So if you want to jump straight into the Marcel's talk, feel free to use the timestamps in the description below. So for now, I'm going to dive into the meta mindset of the day, which is trust the process. And this is related with the two tournaments that I performed well in. It can be easy at the start of a set or start of a patch to get lost, to feel like you have no idea what's happening and your LP is not climbing, to get discouraged, to get just lose confidence. And this is, by the way, is just as true in life. That a key idea here by Robert Louis Stevenson is don't judge each day by the harvest you reap, but by the seeds that you plant. And it's really useful for me right now, given that I just performed really well in these two tournaments. I got, first out of, it was 16 players in the beginning for this one, and second out of 16 players. Just felt really rewarding, and I definitely want to enjoy the harvest that I reaped for these tournaments. But it's a useful reminder to me that it is because of all of the seeds that I planted in the past that allowed me to harvest the results in these tournaments. And so if I am focused solely on the results each day as I go, it becomes too frustrating because then I'm focused on, oh, did I win or lose today? Did I win or lose this game? It becomes so results oriented and short term focused that I kind of lose the causation flow or the cause and effect of why good results come, which is that I planted good seeds and all of the work that I put in with Marcel over the course of this set, as far as just improving my fundamentals, and then just the what I was doing around after every game that I bought forward, figuring out what was a lesson that I learned. So all of those things are seeds that I planted, and that these tournament results are a result of that harvest. Steve Jobs said, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. So you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future. And this is, again, looking at the dots connecting backwards. You know, it's like this representation here, that the tournament results came, I hit Challenger earlier than I did in any previous set, this set. And so I can look backwards at what happened as far as the results. But when I was in the beginning of the set and the inevitable downturns that you will have where you feel lost and you don't know what's going on, the low rolls, the times I've gone on tilt, you can't connect the dots when you're looking forward. And so you have to have that degree of faith, especially if you're planting seeds and you believe you have a good process. You trust the process, right? You have to have that faith that somehow things will work out. And that's for sure just as true in life, because there's so much uncertainty, so much unknown. The variance as far as what's going to happen in the game and in life is increasing over time, with climate change, with COVID, with random, LA fires. Like, you don't know what's going to happen. And so having that trust and faith, especially if you're putting in the work, you're planting the seeds, can make all the difference in the world in having you believe and have optimism in your future and believe in yourself, can make all the difference in trusting that, the future is going to work out. Einstein said, "It's not the fruits of scientific research that elevate a man and enrich his nature, but the urge to understand, the intellectual work, creative or receptive." And so related to these ideas is Einstein saying, he did produce a lot of fruits of scientific research, but really the key thing that he wants to highlight is that it's that creative urge, the curiosity, the openness to new experience and new ideas. That's the reason that we live. And when I apply this to TFT, it's great to have these tournament results, to perform well in these tournaments. It's great for Marcel to be able to do well, and hopefully he can make worlds. But at the end of the day, it's not really the results that make it worthwhile. It's the journey along the way. It's the enjoyment of planting the seeds. That when we are engaging in something that is challenging, that's mysterious, that's creative, that process itself is the reward. Nietzsche said, "Don't talk about giftedness. We can name many great men who were not gifted. They acquired greatness, became, quote, geniuses, as we put it, through qualities that nobody would boast about. They all possessed a serious workman attitude to construct the parts properly before looking at the whole." So that's, planting the seeds, doing the intellectual work, creative work, before looking at the fruits of the research, before looking at the great whole. They allowed themselves time for it. They were patient because they took more pleasure in making the little secondary things well. So again, going back to doing the detailed work, trusting the process, planting the seeds, taking more pleasure in those little things than in the effect of the dazzling whole, than in the fruits of the scientific research, than in the harvest that you reap. Right? So it's really about the process, the planting. It's not so much about, your rank, the the tournament results, whatever. It's that they took pleasure in the little things. They do the work and having that trust in the process. And yeah, it's great when you can have the seeds that you plant turn into a beautiful tree that you can eat the fruit of. That's rewarding. But really, at the end of the day, it's all about trusting the process, planting the seeds, engaging your creative core, and putting in that work. And so this is just as much a reminder to myself as it is a suggestion for you, that, next set when I am struggling, to remember that these are kind of the ideas that helped me get to this point where I performed well. And hopefully can help you get to the point where you can improve your TFT play, enjoy it more, have more fun, produce more fruit. But remember that the reason that you're producing the fruit is that the process of planting the seeds can be so enjoyable. And I hope that you can extend that as a metaphor for your life, that wherever you are, if you feel stuck, if you feel like the path forward seems dark and mysterious and unknown, maybe you feel like there's no light at the end of the tunnel as far as where your career is at, where your life is at, go back to basics, go back to the fundamentals, go back to planting seeds, go back to leaning into your curiosity and trusting that if you have the right process, the right mindset, the fruit will come, the tree will come. Be patient. Take pleasure in the small things. Learn how to do that well again, and the results will follow. So with that said, I hope you enjoyed this intro. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And thanks for watching. I hope you enjoy Marcel's meta analysis for 13.6. I'll see you in the next one.
My read is based on discussions with like regional study groups I've been a part of, mostly EU folks actually. Imagine finding it's not that easy to have a study group for something like regionals where you want to ask people that you're competing with, and obviously like that's at odds with competing against them. So then it ends up being, I think, that other regions are down to help each other out because you're not competing directly against them, but you trust that they're as good in that sense. So yeah, based on that and also scrims that I've been doing with other regional players, and just consulting other people's tier lists as well that are publicly available. But yeah, overall, I'll just cover these and then maybe like go into these, and feel free to like speak up and ask any questions if you feel the need to. I would say the first like big change that you should be wary of is how good 4 sniper flex is. This line can play with a lot of different front lines on stage 4. I would say like optimally for your end game, it would be like experiment. Like I think Dishop has an example of it on his TFT Academy. It's like Mundo. This is like one variation. Obviously, getting to Warwick is how you truly cap this board eventually. But it's like this with Nunu and Elise. This is like probably the best variation, but not that easy to hit because you really want the Elise 2 to make this pop off. Otherwise, your front line's kind of shit with just Mundo upgraded. And any 4 snipers. Obviously, Twitch, Prio. If you're playing from way ahead, you don't want to just look for these specific units. You want to just stabilize on whatever you have upgraded. 4 Watcher is very good, just as a trait now because it's been buffed. And so you can play 4 Sniper, 4 Watcher. The traits work out very well with like Firelight and just any other Watcher as a 4th Watcher. You have Cog and Zeri. I've heard that you can stabilize this because of how strong 4 Sniper is now. You can stabilize this off of just Zeri too if you're from way ahead, and not even like Twitch 1, and you're just like just Prio Zeri, or put items on Zeri too, or maybe you don't even hit Twitch. You're like 1 Caitlyn, whatever. You're stable. If you're on this variation though, it caps a little lower. I think if you get stuck on just the Watchers, because your level 9 is a little odd. I think it's best with a Watcher with a Sniper plus 1. Or maybe I don't know if you're really willing to play with like 6 Watcher if you have a Watcher plus 1, but 6 Sniper is super broken. It's one of the best emblems in the game. And so with how strong this line is on stage 4, it makes holding snipers pretty good. So like playing around like Maddie, Zeri, opener, quite good. Especially because you can also reroll Zeri, right? So like holding these guys ends up being quite good. So that's probably the first like very impactful difference this patch. Another one is how you can play quick strikers no longer just around artifact nocturne or like too much value. So it used to be that this line was only if knock artifact or too much value, or like high roll TF Loris early, right? Whereas now, Akali is a monster. Akali really good stage 2 and 3. And I don't know if there's consensus on what true bis is on Akali. I feel like I've seen her pop off with so many different mix of items. So like you can like the standard like melee like Hodge, BT, Titans. I've seen it like JG, Hodge, +1. I've even seen like Crown Guard plus whatever. Like it doesn't seem like it. Don't know if it really matters. But because of how good Akali is, you can kind of play this like I don't know if y'all have played like the Camille ambusher line with Smeech, where like you very slight roll on 6 just to be stable, and then you try to roll mostly on 7. You can kind of play this in that way. So like stabilize off Akali 2, Akali item prio on stage 3, and then try to go 7 on 4-1/4-2. The hell? If not close to Akali 3, and can roll for TF, Akali, Loris all together, or can chase Akali 3 on 6. Yeah. Akali is just because of the buff to Akali where they reduced your mana. She just keeps casting nonstop. And another big thing with Akali is she will randomly wrap. Like somehow the way her like spell animation works, if the unit that she's targeting like dies while she's mid cast, she will like she will like let me clear this board. Let's say you have where's Loris? Loris, Kali. She drops aggro as well. So I like the frontliner like this. And let's say she's targeting like there's some setup like this. I mean, this is a generic frontliner, generic backliner. So it's fine if she gets initially aggroed by Swain, especially if you have Titans, you want her to get initial aggroed. But like she'll cast and then she like dash, right? She does this weird like dash. But like if the unit dies as she's mid dash, let's say she's dashing like let's say she walks up here and she's dashing like this way, right? If the unit dies while she's mid dash, and let's say her dash is like here, and Loris auto kills the step, or like your TF here kills the step, she'll randomly just like aggro on here, and now immediately she's on the back line. And so you kind of want to cheese that, and you want to like position your Akali in this way. So if you get lucky, you can immediately aggro onto a cornered unit. And that's another reason why she's so insane. Cooking pot Akali is also insane. This comp is a lot better, I think, when you have a +1, but I think with how good Akali is, you don't really need it because the +1 allows you to fit everything on level 7.
Have you seen anyone?
Go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt. Have you seen anyone go to 7 Rebel version? Are you like 3-star Kali?
I haven't seen 7 Rebel all that much with this variant, mostly because quick striker is so good as a trait. That's the biggest reason. 4 quick striker is so good, and you cap really well as well. But this combo is played so much in scrims because it has safe placements. Like if you low roll, you still roll typically on stage 3, so you save HP on stage 3, and then your cap is still high because you get the 3-star 2/3 cost potentially. It just becomes difficult when it's contested. But I think if a lobby is like truly competitive, you'll have like always like every game there'll always be one quick striker player in general, assuming it's like not like a super econ heavy portal where everyone can get to like 4 or 5 costs. Yeah, I rarely see this around 7 Rebel. 7 Rebel is still playable as a comp. I think I have it here, but we're under like same as last patch. But I don't think Akali goes into that line very well. Yeah. Okay. Family is much better than last patch. They buffed Vander, buffed Draven, buffed Powder, and so even though they reverted the family nerf, this comp is insane. It's part of the reason why I think like it's a big part of why the overall strategy seems to be like if you're not playing from ahead, you just play towards reroll, because now there's so many reroll lines that are quite good. This is an old comp, right? So there isn't too much to like say. The biggest differences I would say are Draven and Vander are both buffed, and so you can now play this like where you prio Draven and Vander items. You have to have a good reason to believe you can get to Vander 3, which typically is like getting to Vander 3 is easiest through the family like printing augment. Easy Vander 3. And here you like are just leftover items on Violet eventually. And your prio like Rage Blade. You play like a typical front to back comp. And I think this variation is actually stronger. The reason being you won't lack DPS because your Draven ramps. Whereas if you prio Violet, which is the standard way to do it, it's still not bad. But I find that this one caps with family spats. Like you really need family spat to truly cap this variation. Otherwise, you lack so much DPS. The only way you truly cap with this, I feel like, is if you like happenstance, like you fall into perfect Draven items, and somehow you also like you end up in the same setup where you randomly get to hit Vander 3 and get tank items like way later into the game. Because I feel like even when you have the setup of like prio Violet and then you get Draven items, it feels like your front line is also lacking because you're just like 2 units itemized. Whereas this one is like, and one of them is not even true tank, which is Violet, right? Whereas this one is like very standard, just like one tank, one backliner with the ramping, and it feels pretty solid. Another like slight difference with this comp compared to before is that Powder does a fuck ton of damage, so it doesn't feel that bad to like throw your random rods and tears you get on this unit. More so in like the mid game in stage 4, it hurts your cap in that typically your DPS like late game is not that great if you have 3 items on a Powder 3, but there's nothing else you can do, right? If you have a bunch of AP items, it's still at least is not awful stage 3, stage 4. And the other thing that you can do with this is because on level 8, your ideal board is 6 Pit Fighter, but this requires hitting Civica, right? And so if you don't get the Civica, you can play around and let's say you didn't 3-star the Darius, you can play around Echo Scar. And so Echo if you can upgrade an Echo especially, because then you can also scrap like a rod or whatever on him, and then now you have Ambusher for your itemized Powder and Watcher, right? And Firelight for free for Echo to randomly do stuff, maybe, right? Or at the very least, it sustains these 2 units a little bit. Yeah. I don't think there's anything else I have to say about family. I guess it's playable contested, right? Like just remember, if your spot feels like you have to play family, don't feel bad if you're playing. It's obviously worse, but because it's one cost, like you can still play it contested. Let's see, Zeri Watchers. I mean, this is a super old comp, I would say, but it's definitely much better than last patch because of the changes to Sniper and Watchers. I would say don't get too baited to stick with 6 Watcher. If anything, I think the stats say that 4 Sniper is better on level 8. Like if you're Zeri 3-star, 3 item, level 8. If I'm not mistaken, 4 Sniper is like 4 Watcher is better than 6. Yeah, see. 6 Watcher minus 0.1, 4 Watcher. Like I think they're both playable, but it just depends on like your setup. But I think by default, 4 Sniper is going to be better. Because otherwise you're playing like Amumu and Darius, right? I think Amumu is not bad. It's more so like you're just playing a bunch of trash frontliner units, whereas you can play like ideally it's Caitlyn Twitch, right? Plus your Maddie or Cog. I would say this Watcher variant, like really wants Spat or Firelight augment if you want to play for like top 3, top 2. Otherwise, if you're playing just vanilla, like it's not awful. but it's hard to really truly cap unless you can get to like Caitlyn with items. Sentinel version, I think, is a little bit worse now because the Singed nerf is actually kind of felt. And mostly because like just Watcher is good in that you may as well like lean into it because of the buff to 4 Watcher, 6 Watcher, right? Yeah. I feel like I've been seeing a lot more of the Watcher variant. Maybe the Sentinel one is underplayed now, but the other thing I'll say is like a lot of this patch is playing around what units you know you can hit. And so if you're looking around the lobby and people are rerolling Watchers because of let's say there's like a Vlad reroll player in your lobby and like a family player who's going to hold Vander, then maybe you lean more Sentinel, right? Maybe there's a Trist player in your lobby who's definitely Sentinel, then maybe you want to switch to Watcher. If there's like a quick striker player who's going to 3-star rel, then try to go more Watcher. Like just you can be flexible with this comp in that sense. This comp existed last patch, but because Renata is dead, I think this one is propped up as like the more played. And now like obviously like only version of Visionary reroll. You absolutely need blue buff on this unit. It looks like Biss is blue plus Gunblade, interestingly enough. Even though 6 Viz already has healing, but another mana item can be your +1 here. Can be damage, can be like anti-heal, and then eventually it turns into a real item and you move anti-heal off. This comp is really, really good. It seems to be like taking really good placements in the scrims. It's not like a low cap comp, especially because you can get to Malzahar, right? And Malzahar, if you get to like itemize Malzahar and Heimer, then this comp is very strong. You can definitely win some games with it. I think there's even like a scrim game where like event 1-2 contested, like both players just 1-2. That being said, like you can't just play this out of nowhere. You need the tiers. You kind of want like at least 1 or 2 copies of Morgana early, and a good reason to play into this. Like Starry Night, of course, being the most obvious one. Another note here is I've seen Irelia 3 replace Singed. I think a lot of it is just what you're hitting, but I think Irelia 3, because it's Singed being nerfed and because Morgana doesn't need attack speed as much as Renata, Irelia 3, Singed 3, I think they're about the same in terms of overall strength. Maybe you can even argue Irelia 3 is better because she's more tanky. I think you really want the Rel 3, but it's not that easy to get, right? Because so many players play around Rel. Depends on the line, but like quick strikers and Tristana being and potentially Zeri, right? So a lot of people could play around this unit. Is this doc link shared somewhere? Oh yeah, let me just share it in the VC chat. Cool. Okay. Dominators are a lot more playable than last patch. I think initially the read was that this wasn't going to be as great, but from what I'm seeing overall, with really good setup and or with like early high roll, this comp is still is pretty good this patch. You do need a lot of setup, I think. Either like AS. I think AS augments really enable this comp. Or Dom Spat also really, really helps. But ideally, you don't start with Dom Spat. You want to like curve into it where you have augments that actually do stuff for you early game, and then eventually you get it off of like late game Caro. You get really lucky, which happened to me in the game we were just talking about. Or you get like calling card, stuff like that. Calling card can be pretty good because you can put it on Cassiopeia, right? And +1 Black Rose is not bad. +1 Dom not bad. But what makes it challenging is that to play like the standard like Silco Mord variant is that you need like combat and also expensive, right? So like I think it makes this comp more conditional on like Biss augments and you high roll, or like Biss augments and you are in an econ portal, so you actually have the gold to hit. So it's hard to default this line, right? You can also like open into this. I think I've seen Setsugo do this at least once or twice, where you start with like really good combat, like pumping up 3. And so because the comp is expensive, you kind of have to open, because if you just like play normally, you'll never really hit the comp like in time. Assuming you're not starting in an econ portal or something like that. The other variation is like the Cass Blitz, right? I think this one you really want to play from ahead. It's kind of hard because this comp you play from ahead, but then the items are so specific. So I'm still not convinced that this line is like very like truly playable. It has to be like you're just planning to play around like Cass Blitz tempoing into something, probably into Dominator like Silco, and then you randomly drop a million tiers, because you also need specific items, right? Because you really want the blue plus Shojin +1 on Cass, especially at least blue, right? Which is already kind of hard to get. The other condition for this is Unending Despair, which is let me double check. I know people say it's very good on Blitz, and intuitively it is, but I just want to know like how insane this item actually is. It's insane. Yeah. I mean, the delta is really good. So definitely consider this line if you have this item, and especially with this unit from Orb. I think that's all I want to say about Dominators. Okay. Chem Baron. By this I mean like going like vertical Chem Baron. A lot of the scrim lobbies, assuming you start out with there's someone that starts with 2-1 Chem Baron and like falls in. If you fall into an HP +1 or into an HP augment, like a Titanic whatever plus 25 HP, or the Chem Baron one, can be insta wins, more so than last patch, because of the easier to get to 500 plus, right? And I think what's nice about Chem Baron in this current meta is that if you get griefed or you somehow mess up your large cash out, you can always default to Twitch. Sorry, to Smeech. You can always default to Smeech, and maybe you're not playing for a win out, but you can still very easily get a top 4, top 3 in a lower cap lobby. You can even win out with like a 200-300 cash out. That's not awful. Also, like, don't get too baited. Like, if your cash outs early and get griefed, you can always like play Smeech and not keep Chem Baron, and so like can play around 200 to 300 cash out, or can just use dupes and drop out of Chem Baron. Yeah, like depending on what the cash out is, and you can even take a 200 or 300 cash out, which gives you like a Smeech 2, just for like 3 copies of Smeech. Let's say it gives you an awful item, you still drop out anyway. Like I would say, don't get too baited into playing Rennie on your, even if it's like you're close to Rennie 3 or something. Like if you have other units that you can play that you have on bench, don't always like think you have to play Chem Baron just because you took a 300 cash out. It can be good though. Like the best items on Smeech are Chainblade is the best one by far in the stats. Chainblade 2 especially. And then I think after this, Flesh Ripper and Voltaic are both kind of mid, but if you get the 2 are playable. I think the 1s are like, if you're gonna keep it, 1 you don't really want on Smeech. You probably want this on like a Civica if you're gonna stick in Chem Baron, where you go like Rennie 3, Smeech 3, and instead of Singed, to get value out of this item, like Flesh Ripper 1 or Voltaic 1, you put on Civica. Okay. I think those are the comps that I want to cover for like what's improved compared to last patch. So just Force Sniper, Akali, Quick Striker, Family, Zeri Watchers, Morgue, Dominators, Chem Baron. Okay. Much worse than last patch. I've still seen these more so. All 3 I've still seen these do well in some games, but it's just more so like very noteworthy. Like if you're having like any games this patch and you're just comparing to last patch straight up, these ones are going to be a lot worse if you just play them out of nowhere. Scrap worse because of shield nerf, worse because of rumble nerf. These are like the 2 main things. But yeah, I have still seen it. I think when played with like the really good conditions, like buried treasures into immovable objects, stuff like that. It can still be good, but I've seen it win lobby still, so it's not awful in that sense. I think Echo is slightly less contested because people aren't playing Scrap as much, so that can make it a little easier to play sometimes. But I wouldn't default into this as much anymore, just because if you don't instantly hit your Echo and Corky 2 and the shield is smaller now, you kind of just lose to reroll players on early stage 4 and then you're just dead. Because it's hard to tempo into this. You can, but like it was always kind of easier to play this from behind. And now, because you're not as stable, you have to hit everything instantly, I think. Sorks, I've also still seen like do well in some games. I think what's become harder with Sorks is that your stage 4 it feels a lot weaker. Because the current tempo seems to be that people like rerollers have their 3 stars on early stage 4, and then Swain is weaker. Is like the biggest thing. So like and then LB1 and 2 weaker. So like it feels like you have to be more selective about your sword games. Like yeah, the AP lines now are like Dominator, Morg, and then you can play sword, but it feels like you really want to be from ahead, because otherwise like you end up getting stuck on 8 because you feel like you have to roll super deep and then just to keep tempo with the lobby. So definitely don't try and default Sorks. Like you have to have a really good reason. It have to be like you want to play Doms and then Doms looks like 3 Wade and then you natural like a Zoe on like stage 3. Then like sure, yeah, then play Sorks. That's fine. And the last one here, which is like weird because I think this unit is quite a bit stronger, is that this augment, you have to, if you're going to take this, you have to be really certain that you're not going to be like 3-bay contested, because you're going to be contested by Zeri Watcher players. You're going to be contested by family players. So I've seen at least 3 games now play this patch where like the Vander Hero Aug guy literally never hits and is just dead on like stage 5 with Vander 2. So just be careful. And even then, I've heard enough people bitching as well about like the unit being buggy. I think there's one like clip I saw posted in a Discord group where the Vander ult was like reviving dead units, and couldn't even tell what was going on. But yeah, I think from ahead and like with like the best start for this is like you have component anvils, you can immediately itemize your Vander, and you're not contested, and you have like one Vander, then sure. Otherwise, just be wary. And then for like sake of completion, I would say these comps were already like good / playable, and with conditions. I would say of these comps, these 2 are probably a tier above the others last patch, and they remain to be good this patch with not much changed. It's easier to get higher Chem Baron cash outs. Maybe this is slightly better in that sense. Feels pretty good into the meta somehow. Like he kind of just jumps around and like a lot of the reroll comps he does fine into. There's no more Renata as well, which he had difficulty with sometimes. So that's not an issue. Trist reroll feels about the same. I want to say like if you're able to like tempo with it, it feels really, really good. Playing from behind, it's still playable. Enforcers and Rebels, they're kind of different, but they both feel about as playable as last patch as well. They're both kind of gambly lines. Enforcer being gambly because you're the jump from 1-star to 2-star with Vi is so insane because it's a melee unit. So you kind of really want to TP to Vi 2 on stage 4. So I think this line is a lot better. I know a lot of good players that refuse to play this line because they don't like gambling on Vi 2 stage 4. Like some games you'll hit instantly, some games, even a lot of econ, you won't. Let's say you upgrade your whole board except Vi 2, you're still kind of fucked. Enforcer and Scrap both dropped a pretty big 0.3 AVP. I see. So interesting that Enforcer dropped massively as well. I think it's also surprising because you'd expect Vi to be less contested when Scrap is not as contested. But I think this comp is still good in econ portals because then you are much more likely to hit the Vi 2. And they did nerf 8 Enforcer, I think. And you're also more likely to get to a Caitlyn. But I think in the other issue I think with it as well is people are stronger on stage 3, and typically the enforcer tempo was you like one style of temping with this line was like you melee itemize like a steb or a trundle, and then you keep that until stage 4. And now your stage 3 is kind of fucked if you face a bunch of rerollers because you're gonna be melee carry steb into people that have rolled. Vi being contested from family could also be a thing. Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, I feel like the tempo makes it quite challenging. Like if you don't have the Vi 2, like before, maybe you're queuing up into like Garen 1, Swain 2 backline on stage 4. Now you're queuing up into Violet 3. You're queuing up into like Zeri 3, Tristana 3. Your Vi 1 dies instantly. So the tempo is a little more challenging if you're not Vi 2 instantly. I do think the comp is still very good. If you have good reason to believe, you will hit Vi 2 very quickly. Whether it's early Vi, yeah, sure, play it. Right? If you find Vi in like late stage 2, early stage 3, and you already have enforcers lying around and you have like some 80 items, like don't think that this comp is bad in that sense. You can still play it. Rebels feels about the same. I think it's, in my mind, slightly better into the meta than last patch because there's no more Urgot and Renata, both of which were like really hard to deal with Jinx not actually killing those units. But I mean, it's still a gamble line, right? I mean, like a lot of it is finding the 5 cost on 8, or you can try to play it from way ahead and get to level 9 and play Jinx in that way, or like crazy econ. But it doesn't feel high EV to have this be your whole game plan unless you have really good reason for somehow to believe you'll find the Jinx, whether it's through gold or whatever. This line feels about the same as well. Still feels playable from very specific conditions. The easiest one in my mind, which I've played a few times now this patch and in scrims, and they went fine, is quality over quantity. Especially when this augment feels pretty good when you have like the BIS item, the BIS rating items to play around. Whether you take it on 2-1 or 3-2, your Radiant, like Redemption, Sunfire, Even Shroud, Last Whisper is also like quite good. Shiv, stuff like that. Like when you have those, then you can tempo with it, and it remains very strong throughout a lot of the game. If you haven't played this line much, I would say it's important to recognize like the few. Oh, the other condition is Trenchcoat, which you don't like love playing into this, but sometimes you pop an artifact anvil, whether it's from artifact portal or you take portable forge, and everything is trash except Trenchcoat. Then you can get forced into playing this. Like the Trenchcoat's Derax Eon build. Then you definitely play into this line. I think when you play this variant, it's much better to play the Sentinel variant, which if you guys aren't familiar, the board is basically the same. With the standard one is I'll just put it up here. The standard line is 4 emissary, and then you have so these 5 units, and then you have typically you always want to be playing the TF because you want Ambessa to actually do stuff, especially Ambessa items, which typically you will. And then the filler units can be either Swain GP. On 9, you add Vi typically, especially if you like you have items for her, or like you have reason to fill out traits like Bronze for Life. I think that this variant, and I was hearing Dishop say this as well, the variant where you're carrying Corki and Bessa feels much more reliable than this variant, where you're carrying like Ambessa Vi, because you're deep and you can do this, right? To have more backline. I prefer this variant more. I feel like the Corki DPS is quite a bit better. Obviously, you can't always guarantee Corki, and maybe you hit Vi too, then you're playing the other variant. But this one feels better. But when you're Trenchcoat and Bessa, you kind of want to position like this, right? And what happens in you position like this is these guys convert into backliners. If you position like this, sometimes they get aggroed first, or like you aggro from the side, or they get wrapped or whatever. And so what I find better, and in general, depending on your upgrades, can also just be better, is to play the Sentinel variant, which is without Rumble, it's Loris Rel. Yeah, so you get Enforcer, Sentinel, Conqueror. And with Rumble, you can also play this, especially if you have an odd number of components. Yeah. And so this is the other variant. And the other variant, like if you find them, is you're rolling for this board and you find like 4 form swapper. And you can either 4 form, 4 emissary, or like 4 form swapper, just like flexing a bunch of other traits and not even play 4 emissary. Cool. Academy feels about the same. It should be worse in that Rumble is nerfed, but I feel like I see it do well and poorly in just the same number of games in the scrims and on ladder from what I've seen. One thing I've been seeing happen more is people trying to hit or chasing Ezreal 3 on 8. And it seems to be doing well when you hit the Ezreal 3, especially when you have like good items on him, like a bunch of Runans. But overall, I don't think this comp has changed too much in terms of the way it's played. And then 6 Visionary was nerfed. I've tried this a few times. It feels quite difficult to play in that it feels like you really want the Elise 2 to play. It's like Elise 2. I guess Alawi 2 is the other variant, but Rumble being worse makes it slightly worse with Spat. I haven't been seeing this all that much, to be honest. I feel like this line was already like more so you like Chem Baron into like super long loss streak into and you also really need the blue buff on Heimer to make this line good. So I saw Setsuko do well with it today with interestingly enough he made a Ghost of Friends Past into Heimer work really well. He took a first, and this one makes a lot of sense because this one gives you flat AP, right? Which only if you are AP items, this is probably the only line you want to play Ghost of Friends Past with, because flat AP good with visionary units, yeah, because they don't have any built-in AP. Whereas this is obviously like not good with a Dominator or Sorcerer. And the way he played it was he just did he sacked a bunch of AP units most of the game. Not really much HP. Even though the buff, the Ghost of Friends Pass was HP, he mostly got AP, and it worked in that sense. But overall, I haven't been seeing it that much. Overall, power level is slightly down. So comps that are unchanged are a bit better. Yeah. So overall, all the ones that didn't change too much and didn't receive any nerfs could be better. Although Academy received a slight nerf in the form of Rumble, right, being nerfed. And then I would say for all 6, like intents and purposes, you could just consider Renata as dead. I never see this comp do well. I think I've seen it like very beginning of the patch. People are trying it and it always did poorly. Urgot, maybe with like 6 artillerists, you can make this work, but I wouldn't even bother. If you get artillerist spat, probably try to play around Tristana. I'm not sure. I would highly recommend just like if you play the whole patch just pretending Urgot did not exist in your shops and your orbs, you just insta sell. In fact, I'm pretty sure you should always sell Urgot because you run the risk of hitting an Urgot 2 from orb, which is -1 gold and doesn't streak you. Just ignore this unit and sell him every time you see him, in my mind. And so and with all that, it feels like the overall strategy I've been seeing do like net good placements. I think if you have reason to believe, you can play from head most games. And so in the scrims, players that I consider like a tier above most, so like YBY, replay, these guys are like still able to tempo a lot of their games and aren't defaulting reroll, probably because they just see better openers or they high roll better shops because better players get better shops early game. But somehow they always play tempo and they're able to, not always, but like they seem to be able to play tempo more in this meta. But for me, it feels like a lot of players in the scrims, it feels like playing from ahead is playing towards forecast but not from ahead and without like a really good lose streak augment is quite challenging. The reason being, if you don't instantly hit your forecast stage, like 4-1, 4-2, 4-3, 4-5 feels very rough because you start to play into all these the comps that are stronger, right? Your family, your Zeri Watchers, your Morg reroll, your Akali reroll, they hit and you're still like working on your 2-star. If you're at like 40, 50 HP and you don't instantly hit your 2-star, you lose 4-2, 4-3, and then now you're like 30 HP, 20 HP, then your spot's awful, right? And so it feels like you want to be like 70 to 80 HP going into 4-2. That way, if you don't hit your 2-star forecast instantly, which you typically won't, and you have matchmaking that cues you into the rerollers, you have a buffer, right? You lose your into rerollers, and then you eventually hit your 2-star forecast. Then you can compete and often beat the reroll players. But at least at that point, you're not 20 HP. You're like 40 to 50. Yeah. The other reason is that, yeah, I mean, if people are playing reroll, then you're not going to have as good matchmaking on stage 4, right? You're much more likely to face a 3-star unit this patch, I think, on 4-2 than previous patches, because people would be playing Sorks, which you can kind of deal with a Sork player with a forecast comp that where you missed, whereas you can't really deal with a Violet 3, or you'll take big losses sometimes. Yeah, so if you don't have either of these, it feels like a good EV way to play is just you default one of the reroll lines. Right? You just pay attention to what people are contesting, and you try to play towards one of the things we just said, or one of the reroll lines that used to be pretty good and is still okay. I will say it feels like econ portals can change this quite a bit. Where if you feel like you're defaulting every game to reroll lines, in games where people are playing greedy and not rerolling, like a lot of the lobbies doing this, or like in an econ portal especially, you can play reroll, you can hit your 3-stars very early, and then all of a sudden on 4-1, everyone has their 2-star forecast and their 5 cost online, and you're fucked anyway. Like even if you have your whole 3-star, unless you have insane setup, your reroll line just gets outcapped. And so this is the exception, I think, because as you were saying, like when you miss your forecast units, you're weaker stage 4 against reroll. But if they all hit, which can definitely happen in an econ portal, then you have no window to be strong besides stage 3, and you just kind of lose out unless your setup is so insane. So this can definitely affect like the logic of default to reroll if it's an econ portal. Yeah, I think that's most of what I wanted to cover. I was kind of yapping this whole time, but did anyone have any insights, thoughts, contradictions, like feeling like there are any big differences from what I was mentioning, feeling with the patch? Because I think that's all I wanted to cover.
I think I might have missed it, but I was just looking at the doc. Is this 4-sniper flex? Is this like playing around Twitch?
Yes, but I've heard from ahead that because you're typically not even playing, you can not even play experiment and it can still be strong. The best variant without experiment is Garen itemized for Watcher, for Sniper. And it's very strong, especially with like backline enhancing augments. Like the silver one that gives you AS if you have 4 backliners, backup, I think is what it's called. Calculated enhancement. These things you just juice up all your snipers. Lucky gloves. And in this variant, I've heard that you don't even really need Twitch like too. You can like play around like Zeri too. And because Twitch doesn't have experiment anyway in this line, and because 4 snipers overtuned, you can play around Zeri in that sense. And you'll take a few losses, but you can push levels from there. But yeah, typically it's still Twitch.
Okay. I guess my follow-up question is, I don't think we talked about experiment Twitch at all. Thoughts on that? It does really well in data.
It looks like you still want to be playing 4 sniper. I think I talked about it in the flex frontline here, like the 4
Okay.
sniper, 4
Yeah,
sniper.
I missed it the first few minutes.
Oh yeah, it was like this frontline. You're playing Cog, right? So then you have Blitz and Nunu. And then you fill out with snipers here. Twitch and 3 other snipers. I haven't seen the 5 experiment do as well without a spat. But let me see if see, 5 experiment seems to be plus delta now. And then 4 sniper is better than 2. Yeah. So 3 versus 5 looks like 3 slightly better. But this is even telling us like maybe you don't even play experiment, right? Let's say you filter out BD, so you're guaranteed 2 sniper plus. So there's no BD in this filter. Is 3 experiment? Yes, see 3 experiments even like positive delta. Let's exclude 7 experiment. Yeah, so like you can very easily just play this, as I was saying, with no with no experiment. 4 sniper, and then you see 4 watcher is really good in the delta here. Yeah. Yeah, Mundo is high positive delta, and I assume Garen is going to look really good. Yeah. I'm just not sure what the best cap is on 9 with the Watcher line, and I'm inclined to say it's another Garen, but without a +1. Yeah, because you hit everything upgraded, the board is super cheap, and then you go 9 for what? But obviously it's odds for Caitlyn, and you cap around Caitlyn, but like what is the unit you're playing besides the 6 cost? And I think the best unit is just another Garen, because he's 4 Watcher and he has the emissary. You duplicate your emissary bonus. And more frontline's always good when you have a 4 sniper backline.
Very nice. Thanks. I learned Infinite.
I got you. I've been spamming a bunch of games. So, one last thing is I've even seen people play Sentinel frontline. I don't think like it's optimal, but this 4 sniper trade is so busted that you can kind of just, if you hit like allow you to instantly, you're playing it, and you just play it with 4 sniper, 4 sniper, 4 sentinel, just whatever, and then you can maybe pivot out of it later. You can just stay with it and push levels. But yeah, cool. All right, that's all I have. Any other questions, thoughts?
When you're playing the AD emissary line, is there any way you can like pivot to 4 emissary 4 form, or is that not like?
Oh, you can. Yeah.
Right
I'll pivot
Okay.
into it. I would say that mostly depends on how much
like the roll down?
Yeah, I think a lot of that's really if you find if you find the Jace early and Elise, you definitely want to angle it. It has more to do with like if you're already are like 2-star Corki. I would say that's like the point at which you decide, right? Like is when you start to like pair your Corki and 2-star your Corki, and like of course if you anomaly your Corki, you're stuck. But it just depends on like which side you're on. Like on the roll down, you should definitely be holding all of these. In fact, if you hit these really early before you find this, then you're instantly just 4 form swapper, and I think it's better. For sure. But yeah, I'd say that's like the deciding factor, especially because these units are hard to find, right? You never really want to play the game queuing, like thinking you're gonna planning for this, because both of these guys are impossible to find most games. But I mean, sometimes you'll just find them on level 8. I mean, even on 9, this unit gets even harder to find because they're all out, right? You'll find this on 9, but yeah, like you can probably try to pivot into it like on 9. Like let's say you make Corki on level 8, you don't anomalize him, and then you get to 9. It's challenging though, because you typically don't play Elise when you're playing Corki. You can, because she's 2 form swapper, but like you typically are playing GP Swain. It's also cheaper, and but on 9 you're typically not going to 2-star this unit anymore, right? If you didn't hold it on 8, you're likely not going to find it on 9. So then a 2-star. So then it's kind of weird to like pivot from 2-star Corki into how are you just going to print a 2-star Jace, 2-star Elise, which is infinite gold. You can though, like theoretically it's a higher cap. It's just hard to get into that spot. Cool. Anything else? All right, I think I'll wrap it up there. But yeah, let me know if you find any other changes with the meta. I'll be playing and prepping a bunch for the tournament next weekend. So yeah, looking forward to continuing to discuss like meta thoughts and whatnot. All right, catch you all later.